King's Dream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Joshua the King came down and bore it all. Yeah, conversations front of the fireplace. All of my mistakes, how do I erase? Wanna operate at a higher pace. Birth pains causing the body to dilate. On a first name basis with the worst pain facing. Moments in isolation. See, I was hoping I would do this to get more family time. A busy mind and worried heart is just not where I reside. I subscribed that all that traveling wasn't doing well for my soul. Glad I never made it when my name went through the rumor mill. I suppose that the Lord knows I'd have failed. Instead I'm doing well at home, out my shell. Good book off the shelf, more dubs off the L's. I told Ray they ain't just gon' know us, they gon' know us well. Happy to have failed my way to success. With my family by my side, Lord knows what's next. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. I know a few things, never claimed to know it all. But I know it's off, never noticed y'all. Hit a protocol, need an overhaul. Need an overhaul, I need an overhaul. Need an overhaul, we need an overhaul. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. Conversations front of the fireplace. I know a few things, never claimed to know it all. Conversations front of the fireplace. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. Conversations front of the fireplace. I know a few things, never claimed to know it all. Conversations front of the fireplace. All that drama and hysteria should die down. If there's nothing nice to say, then baby, pipe down. Life is too short to try and pay the price now. I was walking on water and then I wiped out. So this is for the restoration of every family member that's estranged. I know you're facing the same asymptomatic patient, different virus. Hard to tell somebody they sick when they only deny it. And you confide in something personal, but they think you lying. With friends like these who need enemies, I wish I was lying. Nevertheless, I wanna be more and you less trying. Until the Lord comes back and takes his people back to Zion. Yeah. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. I know a few things, never claimed to know it all. But I know it's off, never noticed y'all. Hit a protocol, need an overhaul. Need an overhaul, I need an overhaul. Need an overhaul, we need an overhaul. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. Conversations front of the fireplace. I know a few things, never claimed to know it all. Conversations front of the fireplace. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. Conversations front of the fireplace. I know a few things, never claimed to know it all. Conversations front of the fireplace.
You may not know I make music, but I got a new song coming out. And there's something I need you to do, but first, I want you to hear a snippet of the song.
I went from being a porn addict to sharing the gospel with a porn actress who was criticized for being low status by the same OnlyFans who treat us so lavish. I'm confused.
I swear y'all thought he did doing podcasts, hot takes. He still can rap!
Now, in order to get this song to the top of Spotify, I need your help. I need you to click the link below or go to RuslanToTheMoon.com and pre-save this song. What is a pre-save? It means that this song will be added to your library to remind you to listen to it the day it comes out. And it also tells Spotify's algorithm that millions of people need to hear this song. So help me promote Christian music that contextualizes the gospel and will help change lives by going to RuslanToTheMoon.com or clicking the link below.
Oh, they got me with the dramatics. You knew that a moment cannot be static too soon.
Ruslan.
All right. Patreon exclusive. Apologies for the late start. Let me get some of you guys in the chat. I'm not sure how many people are here. Okay, 10 people here. Respect. Okay, sorry, I was getting myself some tea. January 16th, a week before mine. I'm basically 24. I got my guy Casper in the house. Yo, what's up, bro? Talk to me, my guy. Can't hear you. You gotta unmute yourself. I cannot hear you. Nope, nothing. Your audio is off. Ruslan, can you discuss? I can hear you now. Hold on. Can you discuss what you guys were doing in the studio for your music promo? What do you mean? I don't understand, Jade. Can you just go what you guys were doing? And we were doing what Nick D told us to do. That's what we were doing. I have the fortune of being friends with Nick D, Nick Donovan. Hold on. Coming out of this. And Nick D makes $100 grand a month, 120 grand a month off of Spotify by TikTok, and so I just do whatever he tells me to do to promote my music. Okay, Casper, talk. Let me see if I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now, boss?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Perfect.
cool.
Talk to me.
About what, I guess. This is my first time talking to you on screen a good bit, so what you want to know, I guess.
Goodness. Oh, my goodness. Come on, man. You've been trying to get me on your pod. If you were smart, you would just rip this and throw it on your channel.
This is true, but, you know, I've had some free time. This is my first time having some free time in a bit, so I was like, you know what? Let me chop it up with Roos, see what he's getting into tonight. But I'm doing all right, man. Just getting ready. I don't know if I told you, I got a baby coming in January, so I'm just
congrats, man. That's big.
Yeah, I'm excited of having a daughter. That in itself,
yeah,
in a fallen world like this, it's a lot. But you know, I'm excited. I'm enjoying the journey of it all. But other than that, I'm doing all right, man. Just keeping my head on straight and protecting all realms of health at this time. So,
amen, man. Daughters are amazing. I had a daughter earlier this year as well. Well, excuse me, last year. So she's great though, man. Kids are dope, but daughters are special, man. Daughters are special.
Yeah.
Guys, if you're here, that means the line is open and you guys can call in. Okay. So I'm gonna pull up the chat on my phone because I don't have it open on the. I wonder if I can navigate it and open it on here. Let's see. Okay, boom. So if you're here, let me know where you're watching this from. Let's see if I can open it on the big screen. Let me know if you guys got any specific questions for me. Bang, bang, bang. I see. Okay, boom. I see the chat. I see all the moderators. Appreciate all the moderators. Not that we need moderators for a Patreon-only stream. But yeah, man. Yeah. I'll tell you what, this entire last week just feels like we're in the Twilight Zone. It really feels, let me get my X-Files music. It really feels like we've entered a new frontier of the most unexpected things that you would never see. Kanye on Tim Pool and Alex Jones. Ruslan on No Jumper. What is going on right now? Is Jesus coming back any moment? Could it be so, ladies and gentlemen? I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a weird time. The year's coming to an end. They're saying the recession is really about to be felt. I don't know. I don't know what to make of everything that's going on, but it is a weird time. But I'm still hopeful, man. I'm still hopeful. I'm hopeful that the best is yet to come. That's where I'm at. I got my Chosen cup, by the way. Got my Chosen. I think Casper froze. You guys see the Chosen? I'm almost caught up on the Chosen. All right, guys. Hey, the phone lines are open. If any of you guys want to call in, chop it up. That would be great. I don't think I want to react to any more of this Alex Jones clip. Let's see if it's on Rumble. I really don't want to react to this Alex Jones clip. Let's see. Alex. Yay. This Tim Pool reacting to it. Yeah, I don't even know where the clip is. Breaking, Ye challenges Elon Musk over Alex Jones banning. Balenciaga exposed. Yeah, I don't even see it. The full thing is on Rumble. Don't watch it. Okay, respect. Respect. I will not watch it. I want to talk to you guys anyway. My guy JP just called in. JP, you ready? I'm going to bring you in, my G. You good to go?
Yeah. Yo, what's up,
man? Talk to me.
Yo, so I I wanted to kind of revisit the whole conversation with like Kanye and the anti-Semitism, because I think one of the biggest things that people who either legitimately or are like anti-Semite light, like you get in some communities. I think that they don't understand that a lot of like the conspiracies or like a lot of the comments like, well, the Jews run the banks and stuff like that. People like to say a lot of it is like there is like there like if you look, I mean, like it's kind of what Dave Chappelle was saying. He's like, if you look, like you can understand why people would say that. But I think people don't understand the history behind some of the stuff, because you got to think like when you go back to like the Middle Ages, like literally like Christianity being the dominant religion in Europe, they literally looked at Jewish people as like, you're the people that killed Jesus, right? And they were outcasts in society during the diaspora, from Roman. And so like there's a lot of things they weren't allowed to do. And so because they were Jewish. And so they end up becoming bankers and moneylenders because no one wants that job, because nobody wants to be that guy.
Come on.
Right? And this is literally like, if you read the book Bonhoeffer by Eric Metaxas, which can't stand Eric Metaxas now, but he wrote a really, really great book about a really great man of God named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was a German pastor, also was like a spy for a time, ends up actually like dying in like a concentration camp, because Christians were actually rounded up too, like people who refused to bow to the state church. And one of the things you learn about that in that book is a little bit about this, is that one of the reasons why like Hitler and the architects of like the anti-Jewish propaganda that led to the Holocaust, one of the reasons why it was so successful is because they used that kind of stuff against them. They're like, oh, like after World War I, they're in this massive economic collapse, and they're like, yeah, like we don't have any money. Well, why is that? Well, I mean, look at the people who run the banks. It's the Jews. And so, but again, it's like when you look at it historically, like the reason why there's like certain lines of work that so many Jewish people are in, it's like a generational thing for like some of them for literally hundreds of years, because that was the only type of work they were allowed to do, because there was so much prejudice against them, post Constantine, because they were seen as the people that killed Jesus. So I feel like more people should speak to that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get Rudy Israel on, who was just on Godfrey's podcast. He's I have a mutual friend with him, my buddy Kosher Deals. And so I reacted to one of his videos about Ye and like specifically what is anti-Semitism and why are these things anti-Semitic. And I think I just think it sucks that Jewish people have to have an apologetic for why they're successful. Like that's really sad. Like, like, yo, by the way, what you just described, or how about just the fact that they've been substantially more literate than other populations, focused on education because they read the Torah, all these different things. So I think that's a bummer, man. Like I think it sucks. And yeah, I'm trying to get Rudy on. He was out here in LA and we just missed each other. He was going to actually drive up in the morning, but we couldn't figure it out. But Rudy's a great advocate for this stuff. He does a lot of Palestinian-Israeli conflict resolution type stuff. He's a great voice. So he is a Moroccan Jew that was born in France because his great-great-grandfather was displaced. And so, yeah, man, I think I understand why they're like tight about any type of anti. I get it, I get it, and it seems like the younger generation is doing a good job of explaining and articulating why these things are problematic, why these things are unhelpful, and so yeah, but yeah, like I was having a conversation and somebody was like, the major labels are owned by the Jews. The Jews run them. It's like the major labels are three multinational conglomerates: Universal, Sony, which is a Japanese company, and Warner. Like, those are publicly traded companies that anybody can buy into.
And then a lot of the smaller labels, they own them anyway. Like,
right.
You know,
So to say that like
ones.
the Jews run it, like it's such an asinine position that I think is, I think psychologically, like if you're not doing good, it's easier to blame someone else. You know, it's easier to blame a group of people if you're not doing good, and it's the other, and it's maybe somebody you don't have access to, and it's just easier to dismiss. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and so I'm curious to see if there are like kind of more conversations had and re-education, because I think maybe a generation just missed this stuff. You know, like maybe like Gen Z just missed this, but like I read Anne Frank. I grew up hearing about this stuff and understanding, and you know, like I just went to a Holocaust museum, you know, so
right.
My grandfather fought in World War II, you know, against the Nazis. I just think it's unfortunate that like they need an apologetic. They need to explain this stuff. It's really sad.
Well, people who don't understand, like I said, like it's those tragic historical consequences mixed with, you know, the traditional values they have, where they do put a big emphasis on family and building up a community, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. And you know, and it's just unfortunate that people kind of twist that into, you know, oh, it's them, you know, they're the ones, you know. And I think I really would love to hear Rudy Israel on the whole Palestine-Israel thing, because, you know, kind of a side note, that's something that, like, especially in the last, like, probably, like, 4 or 5 years, I've had a really difficult time, like, walking through, because I feel like my upbringing, you know, coming from the South and, like, growing up in, like, pretty fundamentalist circles, you know, not super fundamentalist, but you know what I mean, like, more conservative circles, and I've kind of, through going to college and meeting all kinds of incredible people, you know, and walking through life with other Jesus followers, I've kind of come to have a lot of different opinions on things than I did, you know, when I was in high school, middle school. But I feel like one of the things that's always stuck around is just this, like, you got to be pro-Israel. Like, you gotta, like, no matter what, like, the Lord blesses, like, you know, we want to bless who the Lord blesses. And that's God's chosen people. And so we, you know, we got to stand with Israel. And it's like, it's really been a struggle when you see, I mean, obviously, like, there's evil people in Palestine who are constantly trying to attack Israel, but there's also, like, some absolute monstrous things that Israel has done and continues to do to the Palestinian people as well. And I understand the root of the conflict being, like, you know, it was Israel, and then they all got kicked out, and they came back into it. Like, that's so complicated. But I think one of the things that I heard recently, and I don't know how Rudy Israel would feel about this, is I think I was listening to the Holy Post, and Sky Jitani, who is he's a former pastor, who's on the show. I think he said something along the lines that they were talking about this. He's like, people need to stop conflating modern day political Israel with, like, God's chosen people Israel. Like, it's not the same thing anymore necessarily. And I feel like that gave me a lot of peace to be like, well, like, it's okay to not always want to side with them on everything, because like I'm gonna, like, if they do some bad, I'm gonna say it, you know. Yeah,
and so here's the thing, like I was just in Israel, and I'll tell you that Israelis don't side with Israel on everything.
Of course.
Right? So like I was there, and I heard from Palestinian Israeli citizens, right, who are Muslims, Arab Muslims, who are Palestinian Israeli citizens, and I'll bring up very specific things, and they'll be like, yeah, that's not good. Is, you know, these old apartments in these old Palestinian neighborhoods that are technically on the side of Israel, to go in and displace people now, not a good look. We got to figure. We got to. So, but I also heard from Palestinian refugees that were like, "Oh, Palestine's out of control. Like the West Bank is out of control. Gaza is out of control." So it is substantially more nuanced. But I don't know anyone. Maybe outside of like fundamentalist Christians that are like God's chosen people. I don't know anyone that like doesn't have an objective, nuanced view of like, yeah, this is way more complicated. And even if you go, the relationship with Gaza versus the relationship with the West Bank is totally different. People cross the border back and forth. Over 150,000 Palestinians cross the border into Israel for work every day. Gaza is totally different. Gaza is controlled by terrorists. Totally different. You know, and so I think like going on the ground and seeing that stuff, and we were all over the West Bank. Like we were in Bethlehem, we were all over, and we went to check this out, an evangelical Baptist church in Palestine, in Bethlehem.
Wow.
Of tongue speaking, healing, miracles happening. and heard from Arab Palestinian Christians. You know,
That's awesome. Yeah.
it's a trip, dude. And again, I don't think anyone, I have issues with the state of Israel not recognizing the Armenian genocide. Like that's foul to me, you know, especially how much parallel there is between Armenians and Jewish people. Like the history is very similar. Like our genocide is what inspired the Holocaust. So I think it's super complicated and nuanced, and I don't think anyone has to have a black or white, all or nothing approach. But I think when you get into like Israel doesn't have a right to exist as a nation,
No.
what are we talking about anymore? Like it is what it is. We're here. We could talk about humanitarian stuff. We could talk about, hey, we got to do better with these. You can't do that, right? When you start saying Israel doesn't have a right, they should be obliterated. They're colonized. That's when I go, okay, you got to slow your roll. That's pretty far gone. You don't really know what you're talking about. Jews and Palestinians have lived in that region for thousands of years, you know, and it's pretty wild. And there's a lot of secular Jews too that folks don't understand. If you go there, not everyone who is Jewish is like celebrates Shabbat or eats kosher. There's a huge secular Jewish population. You know,
I think part of it is too, like sprinkling a little bit of like left behind theology, which it's kind of only been like more recently realizing like how much stuff about like the rapture that I was taught is from like Left Behind and not actual Bible.
Which is like 100-year-old view.
Which like part of that is too, it's like you know, I'm like, man, I want to see like peace brokered between these two nations, but then there's that part of me that's like, well, wait, that's the 7-year contract that's going to bring on the end of days, like, you know, peace between these, you know, and so it's like this, you know, but so I just feel like, you know, hearing more people being more open about like that kind of stuff. Like I will always stand with the people of Israel. I'll always stand with the people of Palestine, but just recognizing that like I don't like I can have a peace about saying like, yeah, I don't know if I support the political decisions of the nation of Israel, you know, because they are doing some wacky stuff. That's not right. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like younger me would have been like, well, is it okay to say that kind of stuff? Because, you know, everyone I knew was like, no, you gotta, you know, we gotta be pro-Israel. You know, we gotta support them with our finances, support them with our military, you know, all the kind of stuff.
I think generally people say pro-Israel. I think what they're saying is Israel should have a right to exist as a nation, as a state. And I think generally we should all be pro-Israel in that sense.
All right, absolutely.
We shouldn't be pro everything the government does or whatever, right? Because there's just going to be different things. And by the way, again, you when you go, you'll discover that like,
of course,
Jewish people aren't white, dude.
Right.
Like we see we visualize the Ashkenazi Jews that we see in New York with the taduntaduns and their hair grown out and the hats. You go to Israel and you walk around and you see the Israeli military, and there's a lot of Arab-looking Israels with the yarmulkes on. Like Jewish people are not white. That's a very Americanized like view we have of them because of how many migrated to France and came. You know, so they speak Yiddish. So I think like people should really go and like really experience it and go talk to the natives on the ground. The most fascinating thing I found in Israel was that Arabs and Christians and Armenians, who are neither, tend to identify closer together than the Jewish population. And their politics is really interesting, meaning their politics is like the conservative side isn't fiscally conservative. They create more welfare programs. So check this out: the conservatives who are aligned with the higher security and all these things are actually more fiscally loose to give their constituents of the Hasidic, ultra-Orthodox Jewish more welfare programs because many of those men don't work. They study Torah all day.
Right. I remember you saying this.
It's so backwards, bro. So it's totally not. Yeah, it's not like our American politics where we have like a left, right. It's totally different. And then a lot of the quote unquote liberals are Christians and are Armenians and because they feel more of a constituent with Arabs and Palestinian Christians than they do with Jewish. Dude, it's crazy. It's crazy sauce. But it's really interesting, nevertheless. Let me work in some other people, JP.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Great talk.
Appreciate you calling in, my guy. Let me see. How do I bring in? I'm going to bring in Jeremiah. How do I do this? Okay, boom. Jeremiah, talk to me, my guy.
What's happening, man? First off, I'm surprised you got me here so quickly to get on live with you, but this is dope. First, let me say this, too. I've been watching, I think, your podcast maybe for like a year and a half.
Oh, word.
So I want to say, man, it's just been a blessing to watch what you're doing. And even I'll say this too, like one of my favorite verses from you as a rapper too was on one of Paul Russell's songs. I think you said, "My bum knee is getting better. I feel the hunger." I love that line. I used that for my 29th birthday on my Instagram.
Hey, respect,
one of my
man.
favorite
Well,
lines.
thank you for calling in and thank you for partnering with us.
Absolutely, man. This is more of a, I guess, a podcast related question, not really related to the topic. Well,
Sure,
I
sure,
guess
sure.
I have one related to the topic too.
Yeah.
But I guess because you probably started your journey with doing a podcast. I mean, you came out of doing rap and stuff like that. What
Mhm.
would you say would be one of the first ways someone should invest in themselves to start their own podcast if they wanted to? Like, what's something they should, maybe something simple to get them started?
I think, this is my opinion, I think the pathway to podcasting is probably going to start closer aligned with live streaming.
Okay.
And the stuff we teach on Master YouTube Live, on that YouTube channel, we have a whole YouTube channel. Live streaming first, because you can build a live stream setup. You can build an audience live streaming, and then start reaching out to just friends and family that you find interesting about interesting topics that you want to talk about. So like our model now is we're not getting a ton of high profile guests to come be with us in person. And we also don't necessarily want to take a bunch of equipment and travel and, you know what I mean? Like that's also not it either. Just the ROI to like fly to, I don't know, wherever, New York, right? So we're trying to like build enough of a platform where people are like, yeah, I'll fly to San Diego to be on your podcast, right? But that's because we want to have an audience that adds value and there's something here, right? So it's all going to come down to like your utility and your analytics if you're talking about building a podcast. People build a podcast and aren't deliberate, aren't interesting, don't have anything interesting to talk about, don't have any relationships, right? And so then it just becomes about you and your homies rambling about whatever you feel like rambling about. And then it's just a complete L because there's 1,000 podcasts, hundreds of thousands of podcasts right now. Why would they listen to you? So my opinion is leverage live to figure out how to build an audience and around things other people care about, not you, what you care about, but other people care about. Is there a need for the type of content you want to make? And then once that is that has some legs to it, people will then want to come on and talk to you because you actually have something to offer them. Right, because you can't just assume like people want to come on or guests want to come on just because like you're a nice guy or just because you're a Christian. It has to be something in it for them as well, right? And so like the more you build out your audience, the more you build out a YouTube presence, the more you build these things out, the faster. And so again, in my opinion, that's going to be directly correlated through live streaming on YouTube, scaling over to TikTok and YouTube Shorts, which YouTube Shorts is about to be even bigger come January because they started monetizing it. There's going to be ads on it now. And so that would be my advice to everybody. And I think too many people start and don't really have a plan and they're not really being deliberate. And so then it just becomes about them rambling, you know? Yeah. And even like an introduction, like even in a conversation with someone, like the beginning of a podcast, like you can't do what Joe Rogan does. Like Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan already had a platform, was already a comedian, and therefore he can start a podcast and meander and ramble and talk about nothing for the first 10 minutes. If you don't have an audience, why would anybody want to hear you ramble about how your day went? True. You know what I mean? So if you're going to have a guest on, you need to jump right into the conversation and get to the point of whatever the value add that you're promising people. And or at the very least, don't live stream that, pre-record that, and then chop it up with intros, like a little preview of what's about to come. And good content, good conversation, things people are interested about, conflict, tension. Those are the macro ideas of any type of content that's going to be disruptive. So it's like you have one or two options. Get popping or be connected to someone popping and have them help pull you up, or go and put in the hard work of building a YouTube presence, leveraging live streaming and short form content. And then eventually people will want to come on and have conversations with you, and then reach out to people that are like in the same stratosphere as you, because then it becomes mutually beneficial. So if you have 1,000 subscribers, someone else has 1,000 subscribers, it becomes mutually beneficial instead of like someone has, 50,000 subscribers and you're like, do an interview with me. You got to have something really interesting to want someone to come on. You got to have and so that's how I would look at it. And so I think people still forget that people's time is finite. You have to have value. You have to present something to get somebody on. And if you don't have some form of value, then it's unlikely you're going to grow a podcast that way.
Fair enough. Gotcha. Okay. All right.
So
Now,
is
in
that,
regards to,
go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, is that helpful? Does that bring some
No,
clarity?
yeah, that's definitely helpful because I guess so. I have one friend. He had and I think this is probably where his fault is. He kind of started his own podcast, but he does it just on like he has an iTunes podcast. Doesn't do like video version or anything. But I think his thing is that he does kind of end up rambling sometimes. Like he's trying to read scripture, and I think he has a good basis for what he's trying to do. And I think he just kind of let it go to the side because he hasn't really like built that rapport with people on what he's really trying to get out there and what he's trying to do. And I think he's a great person to speak on it. And then I have my own ideas in my mind. And I think that's where I get hung up at is like, all right, is the idea that I have for what I want to talk about good enough for people to want to stick around and tune in? And would there be people who would I want to bring? Like I have like people that I work with and friends that I go to church with and stuff that I would bring on. But would they be interesting enough for people to be, all right, that's somebody I want to hear talk and stuff like that too. So that
So I was gonna say so you're thinking correctly. I want you to be thinking about discovery. How is someone ever going to click into your podcast? Right? Like we're on the podcast app, but majority of our discovery comes from YouTube, Facebook, Shorts, that sort of thing, right? So think like it's like a funnel, right? So the top of the funnel and then it goes down, right? So just think of a funnel. So this is the top of the funnel. So the top of the funnel is the discovery. And then as you go lower and lower, there's some sort of conversion that happens, right? So where is the discovery happening? Where are they going to next? And then what is the conversion you're hoping to happen? Because that's how you monetize. Too many people just focus on the discovery aspect and all they do is TikTok, but they never have anywhere to plug people into. Other people focus too much on the product, but they never have the eyeballs of the discovery. So you got to have a solid funnel all the way through. So let me flesh this out with you real quick. So here's what I mean. We get discovery on stuff like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, right? 1 month we grew by 35,000 subscribers through YouTube Shorts. That is a top of funnel. Instagram is a top of funnel. YouTube Live is a top of funnel, meaning YouTube will push your stuff up the algorithm. If your channel is monetized, it's interesting, people are caring about it, it's trending, people are searching for it, that will get pushed out. That is optimal for discovery. Then I can take people from the top of the funnel, just my Ruslan channel, 10, 12-minute video, right? And then they can click into another video on the Blessed God Studio channel, which is a little longer, or they can go and listen to the podcast, which are a little longer on the podcast app. And then the bottom of the funnel for me is going to be something like our Patreon community of $5 a month, or we're working on even a better conversion for us is we're developing a couple courses, paid courses. So we're doing like an apologetics course, right? So something that's like a paid course with like actual educational value. So that's what I mean by the funnel. So like, is there a product at the bottom? Because if you have no way of monetizing, whether it's a community Patreon for the extended versions of the podcast, the unedited versions of the podcast, or a book or a course, something, if there's no conversion happening, it's gonna be very difficult for people to sustain themselves just off of YouTube AdSense, right? And then the top of the funnel is how do people ever discover your podcast? Like you could put your podcast on Spotify all you want, but if you're not leveraging stuff, and then like live is respect people's attention. Not enough people respect people's attention on these platforms. So if I'm clicking into a Mike Winger video, he needs to respect my attention and get to the point rather quickly to keep me there, right? And then like the bigger your audience gets, the more kind of flexibility you have. But so like Christians think that because we're preaching the gospel that we don't have to respect people's attention and we don't have to respect people's time. No, you make a value add, you make a promise, you need to get right to it. You know, so if you look at my YouTube videos, for example, like whatever the title is and whatever the punchline is, whatever the content is, I'm to it within 30 to 40 seconds. Preferably within the first 5 seconds, because I respect people's attention too much. And if you don't, then they'll just click out of your video. And so the issue becomes is people make content, they're not deliberate, they're not paying attention, they're rambling, they're just kind of winging it, and there's no real plan, there's no system, there's no process to it, right? And so, yeah, man, so hopefully that's helpful to some regard. And, you know, there's a way to monetize stuff out here, man. There's a way to make money and share the gospel and have it make sense. I don't know if most people are looking to genuinely do that as much as they're like just kind of winging it. And like, I mean, you could wing it. Like people, you can go to the gym every day and never see results. Like and a lot of people do. I go to the gym every day and I see people coming in year after year looking the same they did 2 years ago because they never want to button up their eating. They never want to learn to compound lifts. They don't have a plan. They're just showing up to the gym. And you can do that on YouTube. You can do that with podcasting. You could show up for 3 years straight and never break 1,000 subscribers. Or you can show up for a month and grow to 50,000 subscribers. You know, it's all in the value add. It's all in the proposition. It's all in how unique your story is, how consistent you are, how much can you outsource? Can you pay people up front to do this stuff? Can you go hire an agency and pay them $8,000 a month to do all this stuff? If you don't have $8,000 a month, great. Can you learn all the skills little by little to develop it, right? So that's what I mean. When you don't have money, you have time. And when you then you can learn all of it, you could immerse yourself in it. If you don't have time, hopefully you have money. If you don't have money or time, you're in trouble. You're in serious trouble, you know? Yeah. And so that's how I would look at it, man. I know I just gave you a whole lot to chew on, but I really think it's like the best of times and the worst of times in terms of content right now.
Nah, I made sure I wrote some of that stuff down, so you good. I got some of it.
Word up, man. Well, I appreciate you calling in, my brother. And check out the Master YouTube Live stuff. There's a lot of really good stuff on there I think you'll appreciate.
Appreciate you, man.
All right, brother. Okay, guys, I'm gonna bring in Steven. Steven, what's up, man? Then I'm gonna bring in Casper one last time, and then we'll wrap it up. Steven, talk to me, my guy.
Hey, what's going on, man? How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thank you. I'll make this quick. A lot of questions I can probably ask you, but there's two that I've been ruminating on that I feel like maybe don't get talked about. One is in regards to what I would consider as like subtle sins. By that I mean, thankfully, I grew up in a Christian home. So, you know, on the surface, and I'm not trying to sound like pious or conceited when I say this, by the world standards, I've lived a pretty good life. You know, I haven't done a lot of things. I haven't made a lot of mistakes. And I thank God for that, not because of my wisdom, but because of his. So on the surface, I'm a good Christian, right? I'm a good person, whatever, you know, that means. But so it seems like I've got everything in order. And I think that I do. But I was listening to the Basement podcast about a month ago, the one with the former porn star that you had on, that gentleman, and Tim Ross gave a great analogy that the second he said it, it clicked with me. He was like how on a clear day, on a beautiful day without a cloud in the sky, a boat that is not anchored will still drift away. And so immediately it was like the Holy Spirit was like, that could be you, but it's not. So I guess there's two questions I have that I'll kind of very quickly intertwine. Is that how I think I'm doing okay. I really would like to think so, but it's like, is there something, I don't have any egregious sins that I know about, but is there something subtly that could be slowly making me drift away, as Tim so eloquently put it, you know, just the tide, the ebb and flow of the daily life that's making me drift further away from God? I don't think so, but there's something where I feel like no one in the church talks about. It's like, you know, we're so concerned about saving the lost, which is true, right? That should be our primary objective, but it's also for the people that are saved. It's like, how do we just not be Christian? You know what I mean? But that we transform from religion, which I think I've had my entire life, to a relationship, which I think I've only had for a few years, where I make my faith my own, where it is not just, hey, I do this on Sunday morning because I have to. Now I want to do this. And it's not just Sunday mornings, Monday to Saturday, I'm also living this out. So that's my first question. The second question is, so then I intertwine that with just being completely transparent with the frustration of people like my family. So again, my mom was like very, very hardcore Christian, but if you ask me today, honestly, like if she unfortunately passed away today, do I think she's going to heaven? I don't know the answer to that question. And that concerns me. Like before I would say that out of anger. Now I say it out of concern and love. Like she's made bad decisions and she continues to make bad decisions. Again, not on the surface, right? Mm-hmm. On the surface, she looks like a great person, but there are subtle things like she's not generally generous. She's not an altruistic person, which again, could be character, you know, nuances, I guess. But then also it's like I look at my sister who, you know, grew up in the same environment, but we have very different upbringings where, again, I like to think that I'm more passionate about my faith than I've ever been, especially during COVID, where this time that I've had to myself has drawn me so close to God. I had a passion that I never had before, but my sister has had the complete opposite effect. And it's like, she's basically the definition, and I say this with all humbleness that I can, of a lukewarm Christian. She just does it. She watches church on Sunday morning, which again is fine, nothing wrong with that. But it is basically like, hey, let me check this box and do this thing. And so part of me, it's there was an honest frustration now where it's like she knows the truth. She's had enough knowledge. She's had enough opportunities. At some point, is it just wrong of me just transparently asking, just say, hey, at some point, sis, I love you, but I'd rather go focus on the person that's never heard Jesus or hasn't had an accurate representation of Christ, rather than focusing on trying to win you when you've had 30 plus years of that opportunity.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's a lot. Who do you think heaven is for?
Anyone that believes in Jesus, I would guess, right? If you profess that Jesus is Lord, yeah, then you're in. Yeah.
So heaven is for good people?
I wouldn't say good people. I'd say people that you have to explicitly confess that Jesus is Lord.
God's people.
God's people, yes.
Heaven is not for good people. Heaven is for God's people.
Yes, maybe I'm wrong with that, but that's what I would say.
No. I just want to establish that first, because when we start thinking about, like, can you drift away, right? Yeah, you can. We will. We struggle. We deal with stuff. We are wise in our own eyes. We sin. We think we're better than we are, right? That's not what preserves us, though. Like, what preserves us is the grace of God and the mercy of God.
Sure.
Right? So can you can, right? But I don't think you need to have a spiritual paranoia about your own walk with Jesus. I think you anchor your life around things that you find to be refilling, refreshing for you. For me, that's going to be church. That's going to be some form of community. It's going to be reading my Bible. It's going to be listening to worship music. Not because I'm walking on eggshells with God and I'm like afraid. I'm like, oh, if I don't read my Bible for 6 months, I'm going to walk away from the Lord and just go and find prostitutes and, or like ruin my marriage, right? No, it's for my benefit that I remain in a healthy and stable place with God. It's for my own lack of cognitive dissonance that I don't live my life like a hypocrite. That's for my benefit. There's nothing I could do to make God love me any less. And there's nothing I can do to make God love me any more. But if I'm born again, I have a new desire and a refreshing desire and the indwelling of the Holy Spirit that, like, I can't help but be different. I am different. Now, many of us start from different starting points. Many of us have different crosses to carry. Many of us have different advantages and disadvantages. Many of us have different traumas. Many of us have different, we learn different. And so everybody's not going to grow and develop at the same pace. There's guys that like, man, it just happens and they're all out. There's other guys that like wrestle with stuff and struggle with sin for decades. And then right when you think you've conquered said sin, all of a sudden you're prideful now because you've conquered that sin, and now you just got this other ego about you that kind of makes you a prick to be around, right? And so it's like you're never going to like be sinless, but you can sin less over time. But that's not about heaven or hell. That's about our time on this side of eternity and experiencing heaven on earth, experiencing a piece of the kingdom on this side of eternity. And so I think, like, for me, having that paradigm of like, man, I need to stop trying to perform for God and just live as if I am a child of God. And the more I focus on just being present with God, the less I'm trying to perform and like be this moral good person with, right? And so I tend to go back to like parallels, right? Like, what illustrations does God use to describe? Well, we're children of God, right? That have been grafted in. He also used the illustration of a marriage, right? Like a marriage. I know in our paradigm, like we don't view marriage as permanent because of no-fault divorce laws, but like historically, marriages were permanent. They were permanent, right? Because there was no real alternatives. And so, if marriages are permanent, and that's a parallel to my relationship with Jesus, that means that my salvation is permanent, and I need to act accordingly. I don't have to spend time with my wife every night. I get to spend time with my wife every night. I don't have to procreate and have a family. I get to procreate and have a family. I don't have to have sex with her. I get to have sex with her, right? It becomes a natural, the natural byproduct of a covenantal relationship, right? And so I think if we think of our relationship with Jesus more that way and less in this like, oh man, I used to have this thing with my marriage, like, is my wife going to leave me? Is my wife going to leave me? Like, I used to be paranoid, without any grounds to be paranoid. And it wasn't until recently that I discovered that one of my wife's attributes is faithfulness. Like, she has been so extremely faithful to me despite me being a mess at times in our marriage and in our relationship. God is the same way. Like, God is faithful. God is faithful to you. God is faithful to me. That doesn't mean we go live like hell and we go do whatever we want to do. That means we get to live as if we're a part of the kingdom. And that's a good thing. And that's in our best interest. And so I would encourage you, you don't need to walk on eggshells and be spiritually paranoid that you might ruin it. Odds are you've done a couple things today to ruin it. But that's not what preserves you, and that's not what preserves me, and that is not what being saved is. And so that is how I would look at it. Now, in terms of other Christians, I try to not play the Holy Spirit in people's lives. I try not to do unless somebody invites me into those spaces, And so it's like, you holding somebody accountable to a standard they never asked to be held accountable to is not loving. You correcting someone when they violate you or they make a violation is different. But if someone's not inviting you into that area, you telling like I remember I used to get up when Zach lived upstairs, and I would like try and get Zach to go to the gym with me every day. And sometimes I'd go in there and be like, "Come on, get up, bro, we gotta go." And like he didn't invite me to be his personal fitness coach. He didn't invite me in. So like, though I was coming from a good place, that wasn't very loving of me to like, come on, man, gotta get to the gym, right? Like there has to be a desire like, hey man, can you please keep me accountable? There's gonna be mornings where I don't feel like waking up. Can you just walk in my room? I give consent, right? And so when it comes to like other people, I just ask like, what do you want out of life? Who do you want to be? What kind of Christian do you want to be? Like, do you want to be a person that just barely makes it to heaven by like the skin of your teeth? Or like, do you want to actually be like impactful for the kingdom on this side of eternity? And like, you can't really be that impactful if like, you're not taking care of yourself and like you aren't growing in your character and you're not being generous. Like, that's your loss, but like, I'm not like questioning other people's salvation and where they are with Jesus. I just don't know if that's beneficial to me or them or my mental health, because I have very high expectations of myself and I fall short of those, and it sounds like you have some solid expectations of yourself and you are sober that you fall short of those, So in terms of family members, all that kind of stuff, man, I just go, I don't know. I'm going to proclaim Jesus. I'm going to keep talking about the gospel. Because the gospel isn't just for like gospel isn't just like you heard it once and then that's it. You sealed the deal. You got your hell insurance. And no. Like we got to remind ourselves of the gospel. I mean, you read the Old Testament and it's like how often is God telling the children of Israel, remember, I am the one that took you out of Egypt. Remember, I am that made a covenant with Abraham. Remember, I am the one that brought you into the promised land. Remember, I am the one that, that broke the rock. Right? God's like constantly reminding the children. So I think we have to remind ourselves of the goodness of God and the gospel. And so like, I have those conversations. I have those conversations with my family, and like, I don't know what's going to stick and where somebody, and then we also got this very like Western American, like I got to get them to say the prayer and do the thing and join the church and do the Bible study. And it's like, that's not what makes someone saved. Like faith in Jesus is what makes someone saved. The rest of it, like they should do all those things, but that's because it's in their best interest. And I think we've conflated works with justification, and then because our society has such a distorted view of works, like we have such a bad view of works because society lives totally backwards and asinine to what God prescribes his people to live like. And so those are separate. There's someone that can not know Jesus and still do all the things. Right? I mean, think about it. Like you probably know some very disciplined people who don't drink, don't smoke, don't look at porn, don't party, they don't stay up late, they don't do any of the bad things, but they don't have faith in Jesus.
True.
Right? And then there's people who wrestle and struggle and do stupid stuff, but they have a faith in Jesus and they keep coming back like the prodigal, right? And that person they could even learn some things from the person over here that's very disciplined, right? Like that's common grace, like common knowledge. Like I can learn stuff from Alex Hermosi, who's crushing it with fitness and business and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what makes me saved, and that's not what makes him get into heaven. It's the faith aspect. And so that's how I would look at it. Like, and I would just not worry about being the Holy Spirit in people's lives. I would work on the areas you need to work on, but not out of shame or fear of hell, but out of a desire and a gratitude that, man, God really is good and he saved you, and you could be more effective by living his way. And it's not going to be perfect, but you can get better. And that's in your best interest in what you want to do on this side of eternity.
Yeah, great. Yeah, completely agree with everything you said. I just had one final quick follow-up question,
Sure.
which is how, so like you said to your last call, which is obviously just a true fact, we have a finite amount of time, right? So in that time, and this is just the final question I'll ask is, at some point, and again, maybe I'm just totally wrong on this, I feel like God is like calling me away from witnessing to people that have had the opportunity to be Christians, that know the faith. But again, I'm not trying, like you correctly said, I'm not trying to play the Holy Spirit or make them more holier than they need to be. But it's like, I feel like he's shifting me to people that don't know. Is that, it's not that I'm abandoning like my family per se, but is it wrong of me to maybe want to focus more on the lost really than, again, I'm not trying to abandon them, but how do I guess, balance the finite time, right? Time is our most valuable resource.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying I want to share and pour into other people. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, let me bring in. Thank you, brother. Let me bring in Casper, and then we'll wrap it up real quick. Future said, I agree, but some people don't do the things, but they also don't have fruit. So that would be concerning in my opinion. Listen, there are folks that get saved and struggle for years before they get breakthrough. That's not really my business, like I know folks that go to church that like believe Jesus, but are their growth is so small and so incremental, but I don't discard them as not a Christian. And that's where the messiness comes in, because this is where building culture happens, meaning that like folks step into a church and there should be culture being developed in the sense of how we live. And then other folks may be coming from a very depraved culture. Like I'll give you an example. Like, I don't know if y'all ever seen someone that's like comes from like the sex trafficking world. You know what I mean? Like comes from like really being in that environment. That's not necessarily an easy thing for that person just to shut off, right? Like that can require different things for different people and processes that are messy. And there's, like there was a ministry out here, I think called JC's Girls, and they would, it was women who would go into strip clubs and buy lap dances and share the gospel. Women would go into women's strip clubs and buy lap dances and share the gospel. And there would be young ladies that get saved, but it would take them a while to stop stripping. It would take them a while to pull out of that life, right? So I'm like, should they pull out of that life? Yes, they should. It's not good for them, but I'm also not like, right? So I'm just using that as like the most radical example, right? Like the most radical, over the top example. Are they not saved? No, I think they're saved if they place their faith in Jesus. Should they stop stripping? Yes, but that might be a week process. Then they go back to living with their parents or their sister who has a place. That might be a year process while they figure out, okay, I'm going to go over here and get the certification so I could at least make half the money I was making while I was stripping. And, that's what I'm saying. So I'm just saying, like, I think we need to be patient with people in the same way God was patient with us. And God was very patient with me and in certain areas of my life, and not having, access to certain information, mentors, just even understanding the way the world worked, the natural consequences. And so, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. All right, Casper, you're live. You're back live with me, my guy.
I wanted to follow up on something you just said in response to the comment. I think Lecrae said it on a Maverick City music song where it was the Jubilee album that they did. And he said,
I like that album
one could be
a lot.
removed from slavery in an instant, but it could take a lifetime to have the slavery moved out of them. And I think sometimes people just expect, because they were taken out of the actual bondage, that the bondage doesn't still have like the emotional scars. And going back to what you were mentioning earlier about, I typed in the chat, consent, how important establishing some sense of relational equity with these people that you are witnessing to and are ministering to, because it can come off as very, I guess, like pompousy to some degree. You're trying to show them your fruit and show them how to grow their own fruit, but like they're still crap in their garden. And we have to like clean their garden up first. And I think for somebody to want to show you even their garden, they have to, one, consent to it, and then there has to be some level of trust that they have to yield to with you, and you have to consider how long this person might have been in bondage before they got to you. Because you mentioning the human trafficking thing, like captivity doesn't just end when they get removed from their captives, the people that kept them captive. Their true liberation comes with the healing from the captivity. And I think that people don't focus on the healing process. They just focus more on like the emergency surgery or like the rescue mission of what it means to be a disciple. And I think that's kind of disheartening. And I was curious if you wanted to kind of stay there for a little bit, like, what are your thoughts on people wanting to focus more on, like, I guess, like the rescue of like the captives and setting the captives free, but not, I would say, emphasizing the healing from those that were in captive?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we need to properly go through our own physical therapy so that we can show to people like, yo, you can be a whole person, fam. You can be a whole person. Oftentimes that's caught and not taught, right? So like, I got someone that I've been building with for a little while, and they might watch this, so I don't want to reveal too much, but let's just say they make explicit music that's very not the most Christian wholesome music, with some very inappropriate language in it, and it has a reputation around here. And I know this person's going through it. I know they're struggling, but they go to church. They go to church, and they love Jesus, and they place their faith in Jesus, but there's a lot to detangle. And my initial interactions with them isn't to like tell them all the things in their life they need to fix. My initial interactions to them is just to listen to them and ask about their story and what's going on and how did you end up here and what led to this, and you know what I mean? And then show them, like show them my life and show them the areas I've gotten breakthrough. And then it's interesting how like they come back, they hit me up and go, yo, bro, like, can we get together? I got some questions. I'm trying to wrestle through some things, right? But it's like, I think we underestimate like how long the physical therapy process is. Like, my mom fell and broke her shoulder. She had a really bad break right before the pandemic. This is 2020. And so like it took a process. We got to the emergency room, and then it took a while to get the surgery done. And then like a year and a half later, they looked at the x-ray and was like, yeah, your shoulder didn't really heal right. We got to do another surgery to redo the thing. So like she got treatment, like she got the emergency service, but like she had to get surgery a week later. Then she got to get surgery another year and a half later. And then in the process, we got both hips replaced. But now on the other side of this, like now she can walk and her shoulder is getting better. But it's still a process to get through that, right? And so it's like she probably wouldn't have been as open to getting 4 surgeries in 2 years if she didn't have, 1, people in her life to tell her it's going to be okay. 2, she saw other people that had the same double hip surgery that were walking and more functional and happier. You know what I mean? And so it's like, yeah, she got treatment and there was pain relief, but like I'm hoping that she becomes a sane, whole person by doing simple things like walking and going outside that we take for granted. And I think there's things that like if you were brought up in a great family, or if you got a great marriage, or if you, right, that we take so many things for granted that like, bro, there's folks really out here that like, they never had a stable family life. Like they never had somebody to tuck them in at night. They never had somebody to, you know what I mean? Like they've never lived in one place more than a school year. They change, and all of that stuff has trauma and damage to your body. And I don't mean trauma like in this like generic sense, like someone hurt my feelings and I have church hurt. No, I mean like literal trauma, and that doesn't get cleaned up with a Bible track and a like that's that's doing life with people and discipleship and like making yourself available and listening to people and to build the trust that you're talking about, and so I think it's much more of a complicated process for most people. And if we aren't exposed to people that go through it and come from serious generational trauma, it's very difficult to have empathy for these types of folks. It's very difficult. And so like I know in my own life, my life's been a mess, and I know like I just been around enough people, man, that love Jesus, but it's hard. And so, it's not always a 1, 2, 3 answer. Most folks know the right thing to do, but like that gap between knowing the right thing to do and doing the right thing, like that's a big gap, man. Most people know they should stop eating processed foods, drink more water, and eat more chicken, and go to the gym and go outside. We know that's good. But how many of us go and do those things every day, So, but again, I say all that to say that I don't think that has anything to do with where someone is with the Lord. Someone could be with the Lord and just be in a really bad place, and it could just take time for them to get it done. That doesn't mean you go living like hell, and that doesn't mean that like, you affirm the terrible behavior. It just means, hey man, like people go through it, and it's gonna take time for some people.
Yeah, and I think it's also like this is an old video back when you had like the fro. You did this in your YouTube days. It was you were talking about when you went to therapy and you discovered you had PTSD, and it was from like this knee injury you had back when you were trying to be like an NBA star, first Armenian NBA star at the time. And like, like you had healed physically from that injury, I don't know how long ago it was, like years ago, but then like the emotional damage that came along with it, we have to consider that people, like the body keeps score with people. Yes. And I think a lot of times that we look at like physical boo-boos and we're just like, okay, we're good, but you have kids, so they probably will bring up something that happened like 5 years ago. You're like Levi, you're all good and dandy over here, but he's like, no, but I still remember it. And like, if that inner child and most adults hasn't even been dealt with and rectified, of course they're going to reminisce the scars when it felt like the torment that they went through that came with it was so, I would say, like brutal. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we just need to learn how to exercise a lot more grace, and not be so like task oriented just because we saw healing take place, if that makes sense. Well, physical healing, if that makes sense.
That's good. I think you're spot on. And I think, and that's the process that like, bro, that's messy, man. That's messy to do life with people and to be engaged and to be present. And it's a lot. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of work. And, but it's good. And I think when I look at the life of Jesus, like I think he did life with people. I think he did life with people, and I think sinners followed him. And I think there's a reason for that, anyway, so yeah, man, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for calling in, Casper. Guys, thank you so much for being here and hanging out on the private Patreon live stream. We are on our way to 1,000 Patreon. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We got a great friend zone story coming from Zach Sparazzo at 1,000 Patreon. I don't want to miss this story, man. This story is so good. This story is so good. I cannot wait for it, because we're not going to put it out there. Like, it's not going to be on YouTube. It's not going to be on TikTok. It's not going to be on Instagram. Like, it is, but it's such a good story. So tell a friend to sign up for $5 a month, at the very least. And then, God willing, man, we get to like 2,500 Patreon, and then payroll is covered. We could bring on more people to help what we're doing. We're going to build a new studio next year where we can have more in-person conversations. In a perfect world, I would even love to do in-person conversations with a small audience and have the studio be able to open up so folks can chill and like watch some of the conversations. Like when I did Tim Ross's podcast, it was crazy. I don't know why I'm telling you guys this. You guys are already here. You already bought in. You're sold, right? But here's the vision. When I did Tim Ross's podcast, we had like I don't know, like maybe a dozen people there. And so like I got this vision of like building this new studio that we can pull the door open on, and then folks can chill on the lawn while we're having guests come out and hang out. And so we're working on all that stuff, man. And so like your guys' support really does mean a lot. So if I don't say it enough, I'll say it again. Thank you. The $5 goes a long way, and or the $10 or whatever you're paying goes a long way, and it's scalable. And I think once we get to the thousands, then that's really when it's going to be lights out. You know what I mean? Like that's when you're really going to start seeing us do some really incredible stuff in terms of, just different types of guests and in-person stuff, and God willing, a conference. And so anyway, thank you guys. Thank you. Tell a friend and tell a friend. And all that good stuff. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. I appreciate y'all. We'll be back tomorrow. And we'll see y'all later. All right, peace. All right, man, I'm going to shut this down.